Always happy to have you with us on the call, wherever you happen to be in the world at this moment. We generate a higher vibration toward helping you to live a genuine life. And genuine living includes healing from a genuine place. No surprise there. And while we don't suggest you abandon the use or belief of your normal allopathic medical practices, we do invite you to consider some healing modalities you may have heard of, but may not be familiar with. For instance, Ayurveda. Webster's definition of Ayurveda is kind of vague. Webster defines Ayurveda as a form of holistic alternative medicine that is the traditional system of medicine of India. Well, today we'll look at Ayurveda much closer with our guest, Michelle Fondin. Michelle has a Vedic Master's Certificate from the Chopra Center. She's also a member of the National Ayurvedic Medical Association and Yoga Alliance. She's a speaker and a workshop leader, and she treats clients at her Ayurvedic Path Center. Michelle Fondin, also the author of The Wheel of Healing with Ayurveda, an easy guide to a healthy lifestyle. And Michelle, since our textbook definition of Ayurveda is pretty vague, why don't you start us off by giving us your own explanation of just what Ayurveda is?
Yeah, sure. This is a 5,000-year-old medical system from India. It's a consciousness-based medical system, which basically means that it includes all aspects of wellness, but it also includes more spiritual aspects. But it includes prevention of disease, diagnosis, and treatment. The Ayurvedic practitioner is going to look at the person as a whole and not just a set of symptoms, which often happens in allopathic medicine. So an Ayurvedic practitioner is going to look at you from every aspect, including your relationships, your job satisfaction, your emotional health, and more.
Well, you mentioned the spiritual aspect. Now, it's spiritual, but not necessarily religious. So to ease any concern for anyone who wonders, hey, do I have to be a religious person to do this? That's not necessarily so.
No, and what I like to emphasize is that, spiritual is going beyond the physical. It's anything that goes beyond the physical. So whether or not you refer to it as intuition or spirit or Mother Nature or connection to the universe or universal energy, everybody has a different name for it. So it's not necessarily connected to God as we understand it in any monotheistic tradition. However, it helps the practitioner look at the person from a more spiritual aspect, meaning the doctor is going to be more intuitive. So they're really going to turn to their intuitive nature in order to help the patient. And that's extremely helpful because 100 years ago or so, when doctors didn't have the resources that they have today, technologically speaking, doctors did have to rely more on their intuition. They really had to get to know a patient deeply in order to treat them.
Mm-hmm. So it really counts when a person goes inward to get their answers, as opposed to just always looking for quick cures or some sort of help from the outside.
Absolutely, yeah. So it is about turning inward because the body is a dynamic healing machine, and often we think of the body as something that degrades, something that degenerates, something that's very susceptible to illness, when the body really is a healing machine on a constant basis. Your body is always fighting off microorganisms, and its natural state is a state of health. So as you turn inward, you're really accessing your own inner healer and understanding. Ayurveda helps you to understand how you can stay healthy and work on prevention versus worrying about getting sick, and when you do, working on finding a cure.
Some years ago, you suffered from a serious illness, went through the traditional medical system familiar to many of us. You had a couple of surgeries, you were even treated with radioactive iodine, pretty scary stuff. And then you discovered Ayurveda. Take us through that passage and how Ayurveda helped you look at wellness in a whole new light.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed when I was 28 years old. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and I was extremely devastated by this news, as anyone is with a cancer diagnosis. But being so young, I was baffled by it and didn't understand why it would happen to me. And I began to ask all the medical practitioners, I said, what causes cancer? What causes my cancer? How did this happen to me? And the answer was the same across the board. Every doctor said, we don't know. We don't know what causes cancer. We don't know how this happened. And for me, that wasn't a satisfactory answer. So I went on a search, a quest really into complementary medicine, looking at different healing modalities. And I said, how can I find the root cause of this And I understood inside of me that if I didn't understand the root cause, that I would certainly get sick again. And for me, that just wasn't an option. So a friend of mine handed me the book by Dr. Deepak Chopra called Perfect Health. And that book introduced the system of Ayurveda to me. And immediately for me, that made sense because it's so complete, and it also takes you to the root cause of illness. It takes you from the body being in balance to a state of imbalance. So you're going to be looking at the body very differently than they do in Western medicine. And it really helped me go through the process to understand how I allowed myself to become ill.
Mm-hmm. A few years ago, I was in the hospital for a brief stay, and I happened to mention to one of the people there, I don't know, a nurse or a doctor, I said out loud, how did I put myself here? And I got a lot of raised eyebrows. And I'm just wondering, do you ever discuss this with people to, who are used to using medical procedures and not so used to going inside? Do you talk to medical people? And if you do, what do they say to you?
Well, I think, let me just suffice it to say that I believe medical practitioners today are a little bit more open than they were, let's say, 20 years ago. However, that being said, I still get the looks of, yeah, that's just something kind of crazy or not, how do you know that even works? And all I can say is that allopathic medicine can only take you so far. Let's say you're running a marathon. Allopathic medicine may get you to mile 5, but that's pretty much as far as it's going to take you. And you want to finish that entire marathon. Well, you need more tools in your pocket to be able to do that. And so I'm not saying that allopathic medicine is bad. I'm not saying that the education that practitioners receive is poor. It's not that. It's just that it's very limited. That's it. So Ayurveda is going to give you a whole other set of tools that are going to assist you in order to be able to carry on. Now, there is one, I was at the Cleveland Clinic. My father had quadruple bypass surgery a few years back, and I was at the Cleveland Clinic, and they're very open to different healing modalities. In fact, I had a Reiki practitioner come in when my father was intubated. They could not remove the breathing tube from him, and it took like a week, and they still couldn't remove it. He was going into convulsions and having a severe anxiety, even though he was in a forced coma. And this Reiki practitioner did her Reiki on him, and 5 minutes later, the doctors were able to remove the breathing tube. So, you can remain skeptical if you're in the medical profession. However, how do you explain something like that? So, and that's the same works for prayer as well. When people pray and then all of a sudden someone is healed, that's something that you can explain.
Well, you mentioned people starting to get it. Just today, I saw an ad on one of my email pages, home pages, that said it was something about a skin cream that had Ayurvedic properties considered in its makeup. And I thought, well, it's great, that people are seeing this and getting into this. And also in the area of yoga, a company like Lululemon has become so popular with yoga apparel. And I'm wondering, is there a danger of this being looked at as a fad? It's not a fad, but what do you say to someone who thinks this is just some sort of trend?
Well, I believe that unfortunately today that yoga has become very much a trend. Yoga is a part of Ayurveda, and it actually, it brings together, the word yoga means union, and what we celebrate in yoga is the union of the mind, body, soul, and spirit. And I believe, unfortunately, what it's become today in many cases is that it's become physical exercise only. And many practitioners of yoga are not looking at it as a spiritual practice. They're not looking at it as a holistic practice. And so they're losing out on a big aspect of yoga. And so that's unfortunate. And in that sense, I believe it could be just a fad because people are looking at it for quick weight loss, or they're doing the heated yoga and they're like, well, I'm sweating out all these pounds, versus looking at it for what it is truly, and it's truly a holistic practice that does heal on many levels.
Well, the book is called The Wheel of Healing. Talk about how it's built around the simple idea of the wheel.
Yeah, so I took the concept of the wheel really based on my own healing. And there are 8 spokes in the wheel, and they represent different aspects of your life. So it starts with physical health. It goes to emotional health, healing your past, your relationship health. It moves on to things like environmental health, occupational health, which is your job, financial health, which is closely linked to your occupation, spiritual health, as I mentioned. And in the center of the wheel is you, is your balanced self. And really what I say is the center is your purpose in life. So if we're feeling healthy on all levels, we can really carry out our purpose in life and carry out the reason why we were put here in the first place. And we're able to do that when we're living healthfully. So the concept of the wheel is so that you can start healing at any level that you choose. So if you're ailing in your relationships, you can start there. If it's your emotional health, you can start there. So I really made the concept of the wheel so that you can really access it at any level. And you notice that if you start healing one aspect of your life, then the other aspects tend to fall into place much easier.
And to look at an aspect of this healing, the start of the healing, there's so much dis-ease in our society: heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, depression. We almost expect to have to deal with one or more of these in our lives. So in your own work, how do you get a person who's dealing with one of these challenges to start to make that transition from the traditional modalities to a more inner-focused way to better health?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is just recognizing they need to recognize that they need to take charge for their own health. And really that is the most difficult piece, is that once you realize, hey, you know what, I have type 2 diabetes, I'm carrying about, 50 extra pounds, my doctor says I do need to lose weight. And so the first thing is just take charge. You need to take charge of your own health and realize, okay, there are a lot of things that I could do to lose that weight. There's a lot of things that I can do to reverse this type 2 diabetes. And so it's really about taking responsibility for your own health and wellness. And then just taking a look at your day. So when I'm with a client, I'm going to look at, okay, what are you eating all day long? What times of the day are you eating? What time do you wake up in the morning? What time do you go to bed at night? Are you exercising on a daily basis? And so we're really looking at each of these aspects. Some of them are so incredibly simple to do, just making that shift, but you need to be willing to make that shift. And when you're willing, you realize that it just doesn't take much to reverse those symptoms. It doesn't take much to reverse disease, especially if you catch it in the early stages.
And that certainly applies to, as you said, to individuals. And I'm wondering now on a society level here. I know people who feel that if they're walking upright, they're not in the hospital, then they must be healthy. This is kind of a nationwide, culture-wide idea. How do we break that down? Or is it just the individual level that you approach it? Can we do it on a larger scale?
Gosh, I wish. Yeah, of course. No, there has to be a shift. Honestly, there has to be a shift because as a society, we're more sick than ever. It's just incredible, the statistics, and I could name a few, but the World Health Organization says that by the year 2020, that 50% of all adults will either have had cancer or will have cancer, and that's crazy if you think about it. Mm-hmm. And the statistics for diabetes, hypertension, it's through the roof. And so I believe as a society, we need to change from doing research on drugs and medical cures and pour more money into prevention, pour more money into teaching people how to live their lives so they're not sedentary, teaching people how to eat better. And, a lot of this has to come from a consumer level as well. What I speak about in the book is that I speak about, if you want healthier food options that are relatively inexpensive, then stop buying junk food. Literally stop, because money is the only thing that talks in large corporations. So stop buying the potato chips, stop buying the Oreos, stop buying that stuff. And if you started at a grassroots level, people stop buying it, they boycott these companies, then healthier options will creep up. And it's already started to happen. Some companies are announcing not making products with hydrogenated oils and whatnot, but it's not happening fast enough. Mm-hmm. So it's really teaching people more that they need to take responsibility for their own health, and really that the insurance companies reimburse patients for things like yoga, that they reimburse for going to the nutritionist. They reimburse them for taking a class in Ayurveda or taking a class in Tai Chi. Just making it more cost effective for the consumer to embrace preventive health.
Mm-hmm. And you write in the book that the expression "you are what you eat" is really more than an old bromide. It's a statement of our reality. In fact, you have a section in the book titled "Food as Medicine." How does food actually heal or keep us in good health?
Well, if you think about it, everything that we put into our bodies creates our cells. And I don't think we think about that often enough, that every single thing that you put into your body is creating your cells. And so if you're eating donuts at 10 o'clock every morning, if you're drinking coffee from that same Dunkin' Donuts or some other fast food place, and you're, grabbing a Coke and grabbing, a sandwich, a submarine sandwich at noon, your cells are being made of all of those things. And so it's really hard for us to think that is my body supposed to remain healthy if I'm feeding it stuff that's not healthy? And so you need to conceive that you can use food as medicine to heal the body just as you can use it to make you sick. So, fresh fruits and vegetables. I say that, when you're eating food, think about the last time that food saw the sun, because the sun is our source of light. The sun is our source that brings life on this planet. So something that's canned, something that's frozen, something that's left over for 5 days, those items that you would put into your body that's going to create your cells, that hasn't seen the source of light, the sun, the fresh water, hasn't seen it in quite a while. So how can it create your cells to make them healthy? So we really need to shift into thinking, okay, so if I'm putting fresh greens into my body, if I'm putting fresh fruit, organic fruits, I'm not putting any pesticides into my body, that my body will heal and it'll just run better.
And there's a million diet books and diet gurus around. Is it just a good rule of thumb to say, get rid of the diets, whether it's the no carb, the all carb, whatever, just get rid of those and start with the healthy, organic, clean food, living food.
That's what it's about. That's what it's about. It's about eating clean. It's about eating close to the earth. Mm-hmm. That you're not, like your food wasn't chemically produced in a factory. That you're growing your own food in the backyard. You can grow. You can have an herb garden, even if you live in an apartment and you have a little window with a balcony. You can grow an herb garden. You can. I know clients that live in small apartments that have little tomato plants. They'll have little pepper and cucumber plants. So there's so much that you're able to do that you can eat closer to the earth and more whole than you believe that you can do. But it's just a willingness to do so, and you feel so much better. That's the thing, is we don't realize how poorly we actually feel when we're consuming a lot of food that isn't good for us. It's not until we stop doing that we realize how poorly we actually felt.
I tend to think that certain diseases are triggered by resentments. I think that there's a cancer personality, for instance. And everyone has a story. We hold on to grudges and things like that. And you write that we have to heal our past. There is a physical component to that, isn't there? I mean, you can become very sick by hanging on to those grudges.
Yeah, absolutely. The weight that we carry from our past, if we haven't forgiven and moved on from the past, that's a very heavy weight. And that weight that weighs you down, creates a whole host of symptoms. I mean, back pain, for example, is a weight that a lot of people get from carrying stuff from their past. Even heart disease, the number one killer is heart disease, and that we hold these grudges within our heart, or we hold, just these grievances from our past. And it may or may not have had anything to do with us in the first place. Often people hold on to the way they were brought up by their parents, and their parents were just doing the best job they could for the most part. And we hold on to that even when we're 40, 50, 60. And so I really speak about letting go. Just let it go. You really lose nothing by it. And forgiveness is such a big component of that. And not only that, but forgive yourself too. And when you hold that forgiveness towards yourself and you really grant yourself that grace, then so much is healed through that. Mm-hmm. And you're able to truly move on.
want to get a mention in here too about relationships. You were very candid in the book about your own relationships, what kind of situation you came out of and where you went from there. Talk about your own relationships and what you learned.
Yeah, relationships are such a great teacher, I believe. I believe that, you know, we get into relationships really to teach us something about ourselves, and we have to. And, you know, I'm not speaking about the relationships that you can't choose, like your family. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking more about the relationships that you do choose. And if you look at relationships as a great teacher, that there's just something about yourself that you need to learn, then you can have a great time in relationships. I think all too often we go into these relationships because we're expecting something. We have expectations of something happening. And for me, one of my greatest teachers was going through a marriage that ended, you know, going through a relationship after that in which, you know, there were a lot of fundamental differences between us, and you know, grieving those relationships and really feeling like a failure, because I think so often we feel when relationships end, we feel like we're the failure. We feel like, oh my gosh, what did I do? And I shifted that awareness to when a relationship does end, and if you're able to process it and move on, that it was just time for it to end, that it was teaching you something, and that hopefully you got the lesson. And I'm not saying that all relationships must end. There are fantastic relationships out there that you can work through, and they're beautiful. And I've met many couples that have been married for 50, 60, 70 years even. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful. But if it doesn't work out for you, if you're still searching for that soulmate, just know that it's your teacher. And what I've shifted it to is I've just asked God, for me in my belief system, I've asked God, I said, you know what? I need you to bring me the person that you want to be in my life versus it being about me. Mm. And I believe really when you do that, when you surrender it to the universe, when you say, okay, universe or God or however you conceive that universal energy to be, you know, I would like you to bring the person into my life instead of it being all about me.
So it's as much about attracting as it is pursuing, or maybe more about attracting.
Yeah, it's more about attraction, correct, than pursuing. So it's more about opening, allowing, because oftentimes in our heads, we have this ideal of what a relationship should look like, and we have this ideal of what the perfect person for us should be. And, you know, in the greatest relationships, often that is not the ideal. You know, that partner is not the ideal person that you thought would be the ideal person. It's often somebody that's so different. And those are the relationships that generally work really well, are the ones that, you know, that there are differences. There's a different dynamic. And all too often it's not something that we thought might even work. So, you know, it's more of an opening. It's not trying to control it. It's allowing the universe to really open you up to the person that's supposed to come into your life. That doesn't mean you don't search. And I do talk about helping to prepare yourself to have or find the perfect mate for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One final question, we'll let you go. Balance is the universe's way, but with all the stresses and strains in our daily routine, people pulling us in all directions, give us one takeaway point for right now on how we can find balance in our lives.
Meditation. That was the first answer that came off the top of my head. Meditation.
Yeah, excellent.
You have a daily practice of meditation. It can really keep you balanced on all levels.
Couldn't agree more. Where will we find your website?
You can go to my first name, last name.com, michellefondin.com, MICHELLE, F like Frank, ONDIN.com.
The book is The Wheel of Healing with Ayurveda, an easy guide to a healthy lifestyle from Michelle Fondin. Michelle, thanks for being with us today, for writing a book that answers a whole lot of questions about Ayurveda and staying well in a whole different way. I appreciate it. And come back and talk with us again, okay?
Great. Thank you so much.